British Spy Stories. Season 3. Official Denial. Episode 16. The coffee shop at the centre of Regent's Park has only 4 people sitting at the square tables that are scattered on the grass around it. Fiona steps out of a black cab and makes her way towards the cafe. David had sent her a text message last night, saying he had some news, and he wanted to see her again today. He had stayed in his hotel overnight until they have talked more about their future together. Ever since he had reappeared, her mood has swung wildly from elation to sadness at the thought that there was so much she didn't know about him. As she rounds the corner of the building, he is sitting reading the Times, just like he always used to. "Hello, my darling," he says. "I wondered if you'd come or not." "There was never a question about that," she says. He gets up and buys her a coffee, then returns to the table. "David, do you think we can be together again? Like we used to be?" He turns his blue eyes to her. A smile crinkles around his face. "I'd like that, Fee. Would you?" "Do you really have to ask?" He smiles. "I found out some more about our friend," he says. "Maxim Kuznetsov?" "Yeah, he lives near Hammersmith. I found the address." "How on earth did you do that?" she says. "I still have a couple of friends in MI5. "Some people knew you were still alive, then?" Her face looks mildly disappointed. "You were the person who had to believe I was dead, Fee. In case they came looking for evidence that we'd faked it." "And tortured me, you mean?" "I don't think it would have come to that." He frowns. "I was trained to resist, David, like we all were." They sip their drinks and leave a gap of time in the intimate space between the two of them. In the distance, the sound of school children playing rounders drifts in on a gust of wind from across the grassland. "What are you going to do now you know his address?" "Go and see him." "And what? Talk?" "Yes."
"You're not going to do anything silly, are you?"
she says. "I just want to know why."
"As long as that's all you want."
"He was responsible for ruining our life, my darling," says David.
"Was he? Was he really? We know what it's like to be a spy for a living. A real spy, not some paperback fantasy. We know it can get bloody. We know that you really just do as you're told. Lie to the people your bosses tell you to lie to. Sleep with or kill the people they order you to."
"You wouldn't have said that 10 years ago."
"I didn't know you were a spy then, David. I thought you were in packaging, remember? Even though you knew who I worked for, I thought you would never really be able to understand what it was like to do my job."
"We need to think of the future, Fee," he says. "The things we're going to do. Analysis of the past isn't going to bring it back."
"I'm still coming to terms with the fact that my husband isn't dead," she says. "And he wasn't a minor executive in a company with headquarters somewhere in the home counties."
David lets out a laugh. Then, after a moment's serious face, she laughs too. The outside air hits Oxford as he emerges from his flat for the first time since the fight. He is aware of his wound, but Lilia had saved his life. There's no doubt about that. He reaches the British Embassy and uses the side entrance. He walks up to the first floor and swipes into the secure area, down the corridor from the ambassador's suite. Terry Ryan, senior operations advisor, looks up from his desk. "The prodigal son returns," he says. "You better then." Oxford pulls up his arm and grips his bicep. Terry's face doesn't give away what he's thinking. Oxford goes into his office. He looks around through the glazing at the large room outside and nods to a couple of people who make eye contact. He sits down behind his desk and starts to read the operations logbook to catch up on what's been happening. Less than 30 seconds goes by before a tall woman walks in and closes the door behind her. She is wearing a blue trouser suit and heels. Her dark hair is pulled back in a ponytail.
"Nicholas?"
she says. Oxwood narrows his eyes slightly. "You must be Erica."
"Ja, you didn't contact me."
"I've been unwell, Stabshauptmann," he says. Erica doesn't react to his use of her rank to address her. "But I'm here now."
"I have concerns, Nicholas."
"About what?"
"The EU operation here,"
she says. "Okay."
"We're not as effective as we could be, in my view."
"Care to tell me any details?" he says.
"I am writing a report for Berlin."
"Good for you. You going to show me that before you send it off?" he says.
"Naturally, it concerns you."
"In what way?"
"Your leadership style,"
says Erica.
"From what the people have been telling me here, your decisions have been lacking."
"And you concluded this after being here for 5 minutes, have you?" He remembers thinking that he promised himself not to get annoyed today.
"It's what people have told me,"
she says. "Look, when you've been here a few weeks..." His voice builds, to his regret and hers. "Then maybe you might be in a position to give your bloody views on how we've all been working here for the last couple of years, all right?"
"Your temper may be part of the problem, Nicholas."
She speaks firmly, but without shouting. "My temper's fine with people who know what they're fucking talking about." He throws the pen that he's been holding across the desk, and it skids off onto the floor with a clatter. Erica is silent, watching a man out of his depth. Oxwood looks out through the office wall to the windows at the far end of the room, and the light of the day outside. Some of the intelligence personnel in the big office are watching them now.
"Perhaps we can talk later,"
she says, after leaving a few seconds of dead air. Oxwood clears his throat. "Yes," he says, in his normal speaking voice. Erica turns and walks out, and back across the floor, to her desk. It's been raining all morning. Taris's leg had been feeling almost back to normal in the last few days. But last night he couldn't sleep, and a persistent dull ache wouldn't leave the flesh surrounding the bullet wound. His grandmother would have said that it's damp in the air. But the years are long gone when he believed those old wives' tales. The windscreen wipers beat out a steady drumming across the glass, as he tells Victor to go faster, or they'll be late. Victor obediently pushes the pedal down, and the air around the car moves more quickly. This road is one of the many that cut through the Hungarian countryside around the city. Pancake flat, a pale blue sky sitting above the farmland for as far as the eye can see. Taris tells Victor to take the next turning, just before a square metal building, with an enormous hotel sign attached to it that takes up most of the frontage, so it can be seen by passing drivers. The road becomes a track, then ends completely just after a gateway on the right-hand side. Taris doesn't say anything, so Victor continues around and into a yard surrounded by warehouses. Taris tells him to remain in the car and walks out to a man who is waiting up ahead, leaning against an old right-hand drive Ford Capri. The two men talk and are friendly. Victor is glad to note. He didn't mind the gunfight last week when Taris set the trailer alight. But violence isn't something that he craves too often. Victor is more concerned about that Dan bloke who talked to him at the party. He's done his bit for British intelligence. He's helped them out, but he's done enough. Looking back at the life he led in Kiev for all those years, he didn't do himself any favours. Didn't give himself the sort of opportunities he could have done. He was too gentle, not pushy enough with his bosses. And he didn't have enough women in his life. But now he has 2 women who want him. And it makes him feel powerful. He must be doing something right. Elena is lovely, but Dasana is a whole different league. The thought of life with Dasana makes him feel happy, he realizes. Taras climbs back into the car and slams the door. Okay, he says, and Victor starts the engine. The car moves back out to the main road. That man is my main contact for distribution in the Middle East, says Taras. Victor grunts in acknowledgement. He's good at what he does, reliable, doesn't shout his mouth off, and the guys respect him. I need someone to do the same job for my EU distribution. Wondered if you'd be interested. Victor thinks about the words for a second. What's involved? He says. Managing another warehouse like that one. It's half an hour from the city, near Pilesvorizvar. Making sure there are men to unload and load when we get deliveries, and checking no one's fiddling the system. What are the goods? All sorts. Those weapons you mentioned? Sure, says Taras. He looks at Victor. Guns, explosives, mortars. Other stuff too. Normal stuff. Whatever's around we can turn over. What hours? Flexible, says Taras. You don't need to be there every day. It depends on what's coming in and out. But it's night work when we do get loads. How much? 100 grand a year. Euros. Victor whistles. You need to be available when I need you. Short notice sometimes. I need to think about it, says Victor. Taras doesn't react. After a moment of silence, Victor says, Taras, I was going to tell you. You know that bloke at the party, Dan? What about him? I saw him and Nadia. Doing what? At the Novotel, says Victor. You know it? I know it. Taras furrows his brow. What were they doing? Eating. Don't piss me about, says Taras. What are you saying, mate? They look very friendly to me. I was there with this woman I know. We were only drinking, but Danny boy and your woman left about 9 from the restaurant. He leaves a gap for impact, and they headed for the lifts. Taras's demeanour has shifted from calm to volcanic in less than a minute. He says no words, but hits his fist down on the car dash in front of him. They don't talk again before they get back to the city centre. Victor drives down the ramp to the flats and stops the Mercedes by the lift up to the apartments. Taras tells him to take the car tonight, then limps across the concrete and stabs at the lift button. The doors open immediately and he disappears inside. Outside the flat, he turns the key and swings the door open. Taras can hear the shower running. He walks into the bathroom and sits on a stool next to the basins. When Nadia has finished, she turns off the water and puts her arm out for a robe hanging on a hook next to the cubicle. I didn't hear you come in. Was she off the dirt? He says. She makes a tiny, polite laugh. Where have you been? Shopping. She walks out into the bedroom, and he follows her. What did you buy? Couldn't see anything, she says. I need to go to Vienna again. Need new clothes for some reason, he says, trying to see if she looks guilty. I love clothes, you know that. She takes off the robe and digs around in the drawer for underwear. What's that mark on your leg? Nadia doesn't look at her leg. Must have knocked it somewhere. She puts on underwear, then steps into a pair of jeans and puts on a top from her wardrobe. As she starts to walk out to the rest of the flat, He puts out his hand and holds her arm.
What?
She says.
Got anything to tell me?
His voice is deeper than usual.
No.
Trouble is, Nat, you were seen.
Spying on me now, Taris?
She tries to pull her arm away from his fingers, but he tightens his grip. Dan.
Dan who?
She says. At our party.
Oh, right, Sabrina's boyfriend. What about him?
You were seen with him. Nadia has to assess what look to have on her face. Does she keep up the innocent act or not? Taris may know more than he's saying.
Yeah, I did see him. I was waiting for Elena and we got talking.
In a hotel bedroom? She says nothing, but she can feel her heart beating as though it's going to burst out of her skin. Are you fucking him? Says Taris. His gaze has not left her eyes for a solid minute. She swallows, hoping that he doesn't notice. She smiles at him.
You're the only one for me, Taris. You know that.
She leans in and kisses him on the lips. His face doesn't respond.
Let's have a drink. I need it.
She pulls her arm free from his grip and goes to the drinks cabinet in the lounge. She pours 2 large gins and gets ice from the fridge. Nadia opens a can of tonic and pours it into the glass. The bubbles fizz up around the liquid, and she raises it to her mouth. Only then does the pain come. His open palm smashes against her cheek. The glass and its contents tumble through the air and spew across the floor. She is momentarily knocked off balance and grabs for the edge of the drawers next to her. Then the second slap knocks her to the floor. You're the lucky one, Nad, he says. You only got slapped. Your Dan is not going to live to tell the tale.